Hi guys, and thanks for clicking on the video. What I'm going to be doing today is installing the rest and the D-loop on the bow. If you've seen the previous videos, you'll know that the rest that I'm going with is a Titan Pretensioned Blade rest. And just to add a little bit of color to the bow, I've decided I'm going to put an orange D-loop on it as well. So I've been looking everywhere for my bow square. I can't find it. I think I left it at the club. So I'm going to be doing this to the best of my ability without a bow square, and if I need to make any adjustments later on, I'll do so. So without further ado, let's get this installed. So as I showed you guys in the previous video, I've leveled the bow off in the PSE bow vise, and what I need to do now is make sure that the rest is installed level as well. Now the easiest way that I found to do that is by taking one of these small little bubble levels and actually placing it on the rest and then adjusting the rest so that that bubble is in the middle. Now as you can see, I'll zoom in a little bit so we can see what's going on. The bubble is slightly to the right of your screen. So I'm going to loosen up the bolt that holds the rest on and make an adjustment to try and get that centered. So I'll do that now. So as you can see, now that I've made that adjustment, the rest is sitting nice and level. And if we zoom out a bit, you'll see that it is perfectly parallel with the sight. So the next thing I'm going to have to do then is put an arrow on and get the arrow to be traveling through the middle of the burger hole. So there, the arrow looks pretty straight to me. I know without the bow square it's a little bit more difficult to organize. And what I'll do now is try to show you where the arrow is tracking through the burger hole. So as you can see, the arrow is sitting pretty nicely as far as the burger hole is concerned. So now what I'll do is grab the other half of the yellow bubble tool, put it on the arrow, and make sure that the arrow is sitting level. So as you can see from the little bubble tool, the arrow does appear to be sitting level. This is all just initial setup, getting it ready to shoot through paper and then do all of the tuning that we would need to do. So as far as these settings are concerned, it's kind of a case of close enough is good enough, and then we'll set it all up properly once we actually tune the bow. So pardon the handheld camera, but I just wanted to bring you guys in for a nice close look at all of the bubbles to show you that everything is level. So now that everything's level, we can tighten everything that needs to be tightened up, and then I can tie in the nocking point. I won't tie it in permanently yet because it's one of those things that I may need to raise it up a bit, I may need to lower it down a bit, just like I may need to raise the rest up a little bit or down a bit, just to make sure that everything is properly aligned when I do my initial shoot through paper, to make sure that everything is pretty close. Alright, now I'm sure there are a number of ways to tie in a nock point, and most of them are probably quite fancy, but the way that I do it, and it works for me, is just to take a piece of serving material, put it around the string, tie a regular knot, make sure it's nice and low, touching the nock, cinch it down, somewhat tight, because you don't really want it to be moving later on. Then I basically just do the same thing from the other side. Tie another knot. And then I go back to the other side. Do it again. Try to make sure that it sort of goes underneath the initial knots. And then I just tie a double knot as far as that's concerned. The next step after that is to cut off the excess, which I usually do after removing the arrow. I'll just cinch it once more to make sure that it's not going to move. And snip off the excess. I usually like to do one above and below, so we'll put that back on there. So basically you end up doing exactly the same thing at the bottom. So like I said before, just a regular knot, except this time instead of going right up against the nock, I like to go just about a millimeter, 2 millimeters underneath the nock. Then tie the knot back on the other side. And then come back over to this side. Do a double knot. And pull it nice and tight. So again, we'll get rid of the arrow. Grab the scissors, cut off the excess. And then I'll get a lighter and burn those ends. So I'll do that, and then we'll tie in the D-loop. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing now is tying the D-loop on, and there are a couple of things to think about when you first do it. So some people will actually cut a piece of D-loop material a specific length, so that when they've tied the loop it will end up at a predetermined length. I personally don't like to do it that way because I like to customize the length of my D-loop to be really small, and I find that it's very tricky to tie the knot properly if the D-loop material is too short. So another thing that you sort of need to think about as well is, especially if you use a handheld release aid, which side of the string the top of the D-loop will start at. So basically, if I have a handheld release, I'm going to be twisting my hand to get my anchor point against my face. So what I've read says if you start the top of the D-loop on the side of the string that is away from your face, when you twist it, you can actually induce torque on your string. So what you need to do is start the top of the D-loop on the same side as your face when you're holding the bow. That way when you do twist it to get your anchor point, you're not putting as much torque on the bow. So let's get this knot started. Basically what you're going to want to do is start at the top, and bring the loop underneath itself. Bring it around like that, as if you're going to tie a regular knot, but instead of going through there, bring it back around the string and then push it into the loop that you created at the beginning. So you end up with basically this sort of shape. The idea there being, now we can cinch it up and we'll sort of pull through the excess, until you're left with this. So that's the first stage of your D-loop knot. Now you don't need to worry about it being ridiculously tight just yet. We do have some D-loop pliers that we'll use to get it to where we need it to be. I am going to pull it somewhat tight, however. So when you do the bottom knot, it needs to be on the opposite side of the string to what the top knot started. The reason for that is so that when you draw, they're twisting against each other instead of in the same direction. If you've got them going in the same direction, it is a possibility that your D-loop will untie itself, or it will start spinning your serving off of the string. So if you've got them going in opposite directions, they pull against each other like you're wringing a cloth out, and that will prevent a lot of those problems. So the next thing you need to do is obviously the leading end of your D-loop needs to go onto the opposite side of the string to the side that you started on. Bring the tag end through what will be the D-loop so that you're left with that. That then goes back over the string and comes back through, so that you end up with that same shape again. So now you can adjust the D-loop material to be nice and small, and you can pull the excess through as well. Remember to keep it on the other side of the knock point that you tied in earlier. So you end up with that. Now this piece here is the excess that will be cut off, and before I do that, I'm just going to try and cinch it up just a little bit so that it's somewhat tight. Now it looks really small at the moment, but when we use the D-loop pliers to pull it tight, you're going to notice that it actually gets pretty long. So I'm going to cut this excess off and burn it, and then we'll use the D-loop pliers to pull this nice and tight. So if you have watched my other video on tying a D-loop, you'll be familiar with the fact that I don't like to squash the ends once I've burnt them, because I believe that it makes it weak and it's a lot easier for it to break off. So what I like to do is just burn it enough that it makes a ball on the end, and that won't pull through when you pull it tight. Alright, so the next thing to do is to use our D-loop pliers to tighten this up. Now I'm not going to cinch it down completely at the beginning, because we may still have to move it around a bit. It will be tight enough, however, that it's not going to come undone and cause me to punch myself in the face. And there we have it. A nice, neat, tidy D-loop. And I suppose at this stage we can actually... Oh no, there's one more thing I need to do, which is have a look at the bow from behind with the arrow on the rest to make sure that the arrow is in line with the string. So I'll set up and I'll show you that next. Alright, so hopefully this shows up on the video as I'm intending it to. Basically what I'm trying to show you here is that I've got the camera set up so that the string is running directly down the middle of the riser. As you can see here though, my arrow is sticking way out to the left. So what I need to do is basically move the rest to the right to get that arrow nicely in line with the string. Now again, that will just be a starting point, and we will do the tuning, which will then potentially move things left and right. So the way this is going to work is we have to loosen off the locking screw, which is this one here. And then we have the micro adjustment on this rest, which will then move the arrow left and right. So let's do that. So we can see the arrow is off to the left, and with the help of this micro adjustment, we're going to get the arrow where it needs to be. Dead in line with the string. Now I can see the sight is a little bit off to the left as well, but that is something I'll worry about when I actually get in front of a target face. So that's the initial installation of the rest and the D-loop. Remember, at this stage it's only close enough is good enough. We won't actually know where these things should be in their final position until we shoot it through paper and then do some walk-back tuning. So that's it for today. Leave a like or a comment below. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and click on that little bell icon so that you get a notification each time I upload a new video. I hope you all have a great week, and remember, just do good shots.